Order. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Langing?
Here.
Commissioner Huber?
Here.
Commissioner Mutter?
Here.
Commissioner Horn?
Here.
Mayor Freilich?
Here.
Commissioner Infeld?
Here.
Commissioner McLean?
Here.
Commissioner Bookmiller? Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Hammond?
Here.
Commissioner Gardner?
Yep. And we have a copy of the minutes from the February 24th meeting. Any changes?
I can move to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner McLean, second by Commissioner Smith to approve the minutes of February 24th as presented. Questions? None. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Langing?
Yes.
Commissioner Huber?
Yes.
Commissioner Mutter?
Yes.
Commissioner Horn?
Yes.
Mayor Freilich?
Yes.
Commissioner Infeld?
Yes.
Commissioner McLean?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Hammond?
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner?
Yes.
And we'll move on to the first of public hearings. First item, consider Developers West Acres Second Edition zone change. Andrew?
Good evening, Chair Robinson, Commissioners. The first request this evening came from Dalton and Terry Stein. I have my location map on the screen for the subject property. This is a currently zoned CA commercial lot up in Northwest Mandan's Developers Acres subdivision. The property is surrounded by residential land uses to the south and west in the R7 district and to the north and east in the RM multifamily district. The land use plan does support residential use on this property in the future. The request this evening is to change the zoning of it to our R7 single-family district as part of the Stein's request to create living quarters in the structure and essentially convert it into a home. The R7 district does permit the structure to be converted within it, and their plans do also entail an expansion of the structure to the west as well. This property is 32,000 square feet in size, and currently the structure on it is about 3,200, 3,600 square feet. I did include just some staff comments. The city's land use plan does have a carrot, and therefore the preservation and creation of neighborhood commercial areas. I did some investigation into how this property came to be. Developers West did start as a subdivision with a lot of commercial zoning along Old Red Trail, and in the 1990s they were rezoned to the R7 district and the multifamily district. This property was not rezoned as there was already a commercial structure on it prior to the rezoning. That was previously a medical supply warehouse. With the request in mind, we don't view this as something that could really introduce any major issues given the complementary land uses around it if the use is changed to the R7. And therefore our recommendation is to approve. This item has been noticed as a public hearing. No comments have been received by staff prior to the evening, this evening's meeting rather. And like I said, the recommendation is to approve the rezone. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions for Andrew? Do we have any questions for Andrew? But none at this time. I'll open it up for public comments or questions. We're taking questions and comments on item number 1. For those calling in, we're taking questions or comments on item number 1. And I'll call one more time. Questions or comments on item 1? With none, I'll close public comment, return it back to the commission.
I can move to recommend approval of zone change to R7 residential.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner McLean, second by Commissioner Langing. Motion is to Recommend approval to R7. Any questions or comments?
How big a lot is that? Trying to find the square footage.
0.74 acres.
7.4.
2,000. Sorry.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Langing,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber,
Yes.
Commissioner Mutter,
Yes.
Commissioner Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Infeld,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner.
Yes. And motion is passed. Second item, consider MDU addition final plat and zone change. Andrew?
Chair Robinson, Commissioners, next item we have is a request from Montana Dakota Utilities to have the final plat and the zoning for the MDU addition finalized. This property was in front of you as a preliminary plat, I believe, at the December 2024 meeting. And just as a refresher, we're located in the far north reach of the city's ETA. If you're familiar where Central Dakota Humane Society is, this is just down 37th Street from there. This is the property north of Heskett Station with the substation on it today. The plat in itself is 113.57 acres in size. It includes right-of-way dedication for a full-width right-of-way for 37th Street in the future, as that is needed. I should say a dedication of right-of-way today for when the future width is needed. It creates 2 lots out of 4 auditors' lots. Lot 1 is the lot that the Lineman Training Center would go on. That is the lot that we would recommend be placed into the city's CB district. Lot 2 is the balance of the property, 100.22 acres. That's the lot with the substation on it. At this point, we recommend keeping it into the ag district. The recommended zoning is based off of the proposed land use and the previous land use on the property. I can show some images of it. You give me one moment here. Maybe can't show you an image, but I can show you what they're looking to construct. On the property, they currently do have an array of overhead lines for their training outside, and the proposed structure would look like this. This would be located on the west end of Lot 1, and this is a view of it from future 37th Street, kind of from the northwest. This is a view of the facility from the southeast. This building has been approved by Mandan Architecture Review just as a carrot, but like I said, we would be putting Lot 1 into the CB district, which permits that educational workforce training use without creating any industrial entitlements at this time. So we're kind of just keeping it focused on the requests that they have today, and any future development on the property would come back in front of this board for an additional entitlement. The final plat does include a number of easements, one for the Morton County Water Resource District, a new easement for the Moore Grand Sioux Utility, and a variety of easements for electrical transmission. Our recommendation this evening is to approve the final plat for MDU addition, as well as the zone change, putting Lot 1 of MDU addition into the CB district. A project representative is here tonight if you have any questions for him. Otherwise, our recommendation on this item is to approve. Thank you.
Questions for Andrew?
Andrew, there aren't any changes from the preliminary plat, are there, of significance?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Smith, no changes major to note.
Any other questions for Andrew?
Andrew, real quick on 37th Street, is there any major changes that we're adding to 37th Street?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Mutter, at this point, no, it will look the same. The biggest difference is that currently I believe it may be a section line right of way, and at this point it would be platted into half of the future full right-of-way for it. So typically if you and an across-the-street neighbor are doing it, you would plat your share of it, and then the adjoining lot to the north would dedicate theirs to make the full, in this case, what would be 100-foot wide right-of-way for a future arterial road.
Thank you, Andrew.
Any further questions for Andrew? None at this time. I'll open it up for public comment. We'll take comments or questions on item number 2, MDU addition. For those calling in, comments or questions on item number 2? I'll give it one last call. With none, I'll close public and return it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of the final plat for MDU addition and the zone change from agriculture to commercial for Lot 1, Block 1.
I'll second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Mutter. The motion is to recommend approval of the final plat for the MDU addition and the zone change from agricultural to CB commercial for Lot 1, Block 1. Any questions? None. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Langang,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber,
Yes.
Commissioner Mutter,
Yes.
Commissioner Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Infelt,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Chair Robinson.
Yes. And motion is passed. We'll move on to the third public hearing. That is for a consideration for a variance of Lot 2, Block 1, North Prairie subdivision replat. Andrew?
Chair Robinson, Commissioners, this item might be somewhat familiar to commissioners who've been around for a little over a year now. This is a request received from Chaden Gordon, and the specific variance would be to exceed the accessory building square footage allowance in the R7 district. In the R7 district, typically a property would not have accessory buildings greater in size than a specific ratio to the home, in this case 75% of the size of the home. Just for housekeeping, this is a variance request, so in your packet you do have an additional submittal. This is going to be the applicant's statement of hardship or why they feel they are in need of some sort of specific condition granted upon them from the city. And we have a ghost plat. This is an item that accompanied the first time this was presented to the city. I should maybe step back and mention that the city has previously reviewed this request and granted a variance to permit an accessory building on this property greater in size than the home on the property today. The previous request would have been to permit the roughly 6,200 square foot home to have an accessory building of 8,000 square feet in size. He is now requesting to have up to 11,000 square feet in size, or almost double. At the previous meeting that this was presented to, the site plan was slightly different, so if you allow me to kind of make some narrations here. The shop was previously situated further to the north side of Mr. Gordon's property, and just to again mention, there was no cold storage component at that time, so there would have been just the 8,000 square foot building. The ghost plat, the intent of that is to sort of consolidate the immediate development interest and provide a means for the facilitation of orderly urban growth and expansion at a time where that's warranted. So a couple features that are called out in there: a 100-foot future road corridor. At this point, it's not known if it would be entirely on Mr. Gordon's property or in some alternative location. However, this is how much space we'll need, and as we learn more, maybe we can work our way down from that. For the time being, this would preserve a scenario where it all needs to be on his property. The two other lots are proposed for, I think are shown for future development as well, which could be further subdivided in a variety of ways. I will now move on to my location map. The property is in our R7 district. When North Prairie was approved, the city previously had a process in place that all new subdivisions, I believe upon annexation or something, they were put immediately into the R7 district. So this property was entirely put into the R7 district. Previous planner Van Dyke did repeal that section of the code. We no longer do that. That's how this 10 acres ended up being in the R7 district. We typically would reserve that for smaller urban size residential development. And we've talked over the course of the zoning project how this does create some issues, the application of it. However, a couple things to note on the future land use plan. This is an area where the city had been planning a development density starting at 3 units per acre, so 30 homes on this lot, this 10-acre lot. And a couple things to note, we do have a, kind of hard to see, but we do have a north-south collector road here. That would be the extension of one of the stub roads coming up from Old Red Trail, connecting it to the Beltway. So this would be a collector road to be constructed in the future. I'm happy to switch to an aerial if that's helpful. However, there is currently a private road that serves this and a few other neighboring lots, including a lot owned by Morgan Sioux, which is immediately north of the subject property. Just wanted to call out a couple things on the future land use plan for your awareness. And go back to the ghost plat. At the 2023 meeting, I believe it was the September 2023 Planning Commission, this board did recommend granting the variance. The motion was made that there is a special condition on this property that the Planning Commission felt warranted relief from the city's regulations, and that was specifically to permit the ratio of up to an 8,000 square foot shop to be constructed. A total 11,000 square foot would result in 6,380 square feet of additional accessory buildings than the city's codes would allow. If this item is to move forward, we would, as staff, strongly recommend, if not require, again, some sort of agreement to be in place related to the preservation of future road corridors and development, so that the immediate development interest can sort of be consolidated, as I've mentioned, that the document is used for. I have included a few relevant plans and studies. These are carried over from the previous presentation, the previous variance. Again, the city has, for a long term, been planning for and prioritizing urban style growth up here, and this trickles down into how we plan for utilities and things like that. So when we start deviating from that, it does tend to throw a little bit of a wrinkle in our plans, because we do plan for certain development yields, and in this case, we're not achieving them. So I've included an impact on growth and development paragraph, such as permitting the construction of multiple large accessory structures in a rural setting in an urban growth area does introduce risk of disorderly urban development and encouraged rural style land use patterns near our growth areas. This can contribute to fragmented infrastructure, increased service costs, and inefficient land uses. This is an area the city will continue to grow, and this is an issue that we will run into on this property. I have included a few snippets regarding the adjacent properties and land use to the south. We do have an industrial shop that was previously a forklift repair, and a variety of single-family homes. The Red Trail Elementary School is about a 1/3 mile to the south. The future land use plan, as I mentioned on the slide, does prioritize urban style development and commercial along that future Beltway corridor, which would be that northern bridge corridor to our sister city Bismarck. So I have included some findings of fact related to the variance. We do not feel that this is based on a special circumstance or is caused by the zoning ordinance. We don't feel that the applicant would be deprived of reasonable use with the 8,000 square feet they already have. And that goes on through numbers 4 and 5. I would recommend that the board review the request and the findings of fact presented by staff and to consider the statement of hardship provided by the applicant. Should this board feel that relief is necessary, the board must identify a hardship and modify one of my findings so that I can forward them to the City Commission. I've included 2 suggested motions, or a motion where this board would recommend approval after identifying a hardship and modifying a finding, or a motion to recommend denial based on there being no hardship tonight. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions for Andrew?
Chair Robinson, I have a couple questions. Andrew, did you say is this property considered city limits or extraterritorial jurisdiction?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Huber, I did not mention that this property would be in the city's ETA.
Thank you. So a question that I guess comes to my mind then when you shared about how this became R7 upon plating, if I recall correctly. I know a variance is what is being sought here, but it almost strikes me as a zone change might be more appropriate to rural residential and more fitting in the context of the area that it's in.
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Huber, at this time, the staff is in the development of the creation of a rural district. We do not have one currently, so we wouldn't really have a district to put this in.
If I might continue along that line, what zoning would there be for properties that are adjacent to this along either Highland Road as you go to the north and then west along 37th Street that'd be very comparable to this?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Huber, at this time, most of the properties we have up there are in the R7 district. The analysis performed in the zoning study as well as in the city's future land use plans do not call for rural style development in this area. It would call for orderly urban expansion. The rural residential land use designation would be reserved for areas probably another mile out from the city. So at this time, I don't believe that we have a zoning district that really permits, nor a planning basis at this time to permit large lot rural style development near the city.
I mean, I would just share with the Planning and Zoning Commission that I live in this area, so I'm very familiar with it. And so access is not currently available to the south, so it is only accessed from the north off of Highland Road as it turns to 37th Street on a private drive, and it is very rural residential in characteristic in every direction around this except to the south. As a bird flies, to that elementary school, and so I do see that it is fitting in that context and with the development that has already occurred in this area, and that it's also my understanding that the property owner has acquired adjacent property that gives the property owner, I think, a total of something like 50 acres adjacent, or 40.
As a follow-up to, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
To Commissioner Huber, that's kind of the question I had too, is if we granted a variance here, it seems to me that basically it's de facto rezoning rather than just a variance. And I think that sets a bad precedent for the commission. But as I looked at the future land use plan, this property is adjacent to commercial. And as Commissioner Huber pointed out, the applicant has purchased the 40-acre tract next to this 10-acre tract. And I'm just curious if the applicant has any desire to develop a commercial or R7. Should we actually be considering rezoning is kind of my follow-up to Commissioner Huber on that.
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Smith, at this time, the applicant has not shared any solid development plans for the additional land that they have in this area. Not to speak on his behalf, perhaps Mark could as well, if not better, but I believe part of the idea in purchasing is not developing the land and using it for agricultural purposes, running horses, things like that.
Chair Robinson. Andrew, we did the variance a year ago, a couple of years ago. He hasn't built that 8,000 square foot nothing's been built on that, right? Even the house hasn't been built?
Chair, Commissioner McLean, house is constructed, yes.
Okay,
I have an image in the packet of the home.
sure. That's why I was wondering if that was it. Thank you.
Andrew, one more follow-up question. I see some letters were sent out to adjacent property owners. Any feedback from those letters coming back?
Chair, Commissioner Infelt, I did receive phone calls, and I was told that we would be getting a letter. We have not received a letter from one of the invited folks. And then there is a gentleman here this evening as well, who, if he wants to talk, he'll come up during the public hearing.
Andrew, has the 8,000 square foot structure been put up?
Chair, the shop has not been constructed, nor, of course, the accessory building. The biggest change, too, worth to note, would be the placement. At the previous time this was considered, the shop would have been in this area up here, and it would be adjusted down to the south side now.
But the house is where the house is?
Yes. Just to make some projections, I would guess that the shop would end up somewhere in this area.
Andrew, real quick here, did I hear he's got 40 acres and he wants to put horses on there? Did I hear that right?
Chair, Commissioner Mutter, I don't know what his solid plans are for the additional land that he has, but I know he does not have development plans at this time.
Thank you.
Andrew, I had one question. So there was a house that had been on the market, and I've been in it, and but this looks new. I'm trying to understand how that, because it looks like there's only one house. He's raising his hand. I don't know if you can answer, but.
House that you saw for sale a few years ago or something like that is immediately to the south of that.
Okay. Okay. So you put one in there. Okay.
They share the private road going in there.
Okay.
Plus, there's a trucking company of sorts, I believe, that rents the shop or owns the shop on the back portion of that.
Any other questions for Andrew?
Chair Robinson, Andrew, so the future road corridor will not be untouched if he decides to develop more projects up there?
Chair, Commissioner Veda, with this specific request, the corridor would be preserved. I would recommend that future requests that are presented to the city include corridor preservation. However, our action tonight is limited to the specific development in mind. So with the, if the question is with both 8,000 and 11,000, yes, the road will be preserved, but I don't know what his future plans would have, so.
That's why I'm asking the question. If he's going to develop more, we got to make sure that that future road corridor is set aside for preservation.
Chair and Commissioner Veda as well, it'll expand beyond this property too with the ownership he has. There'll be additional roads and rights of way, utility corridors as well that come into play.
Any other questions? With that, at this time, I will open it up for public comment or questions. I do have a question. Andrew had that image up there of the house, and from this angle, the left-hand side had a roof line. Is that the shop building that you were talking about?
Shop building is farther back in the trees. In this picture here, the building that you see in the far background is probably a house on
Yeah.
the northwest side of the elementary school.
Yeah, there was a different image that was up. There you go. What's that roof line there?
This?
I think that's a telehandler.
That's the house to the south.
Okay.
It's the neighbor, yeah.
Jerry, yeah, it would appear this looks like some sort of lift.
telehandler.
The industrial shop, if I reference the location map here, is here in this pink shade, and then there is a home in the lot east of there. I can also pull it up on a better aerial.
You have an aerial of the, that's the house.
Commissioners, yes, the home building site is about where I dropped a pin. The shop is where my cursor is, or proposed. Existing shop, existing home, and Highland Road to the north, Red Trail to the south.
Corridor reserved for the road is to the right of, right there, follows the tree line, west side, to the left side of that tree line.
Okay, thank you.
And if I might, Chair Robinson and Andrew, just for clarification, that the term corridor has been used, but really isn't that more of a anticipated collector from north to south, with the actual corridor coming through more in an east-west direction?
Chair, Commissioner Huber, yes, we do have a future collector road identified that would connect future the Beltway down to Old Red Trail, sort of like I've drawn here. It's about a mile. The Beltway corridor is anticipated to be a future, probably 3 or 5 lane expressway connecting west parts of our area to east of Bismarck.
And thank you for showing that aerial. I think it just gives the context that it really is very, very rural on all sides except for to the south.
Andrew, is 37th, is that what the corridor, is that where the corridor would run on 37th then?
Chair, Commissioner Gardner, the Beltway corridor would be an east-west corridor on 37th. The local collector road would be an extension of 30th, most likely.
Again, we are open for public comments or questions on item number 3.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Mark Isaacs with Independent Land Surveying and Engineering, and I'm here to just say a few words. The Jaden Gordon, the owner applicant, was not able to make it this evening. Had a medical emergency to go to Fargo, so he was unable to make it. Could we put the aerial back up? There he is. That's fine. So, just so everyone is understanding, so Jaden Gordon, the land he purchased is to the west of this 10 acres, and it goes from north to south. So the land immediately north of this 10 acres is presently owned by Morgan Sioux. So I just wanted to bring context to where he would own. Does that make sense? The only other thing I would say is that, you know, in the ghost platting, what we've done is we've shown that, you know, he owns 10 acres right now. So it is rural in setting, and what we've done with the ghost plat is we've condensed that usable area down into, you know, smaller lots, so that, you know, he's not building a shop 400 feet from here that takes up the whole land. So that's the idea of the ghost plat, is that even though it's a larger lot, it is still condensed, if you will, on the whole 10 acres. And, you know, the only other thing that he wanted to mention was that, you know, the variance was initially granted for the 8,000 square feet. His plans changed and had a few more items that he wanted to store, so that's why he's asking for an additional building, which would be used for some cold storage items. And I can answer any questions, or try to answer any questions.
Questions for Mark? Thank you.
Can I ask Andrew one more real quick question? If we go urban in that area, what kind of is this going to hurt the value of those lots up there if we say okay with the variance or not?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Mutter, I'm not really qualified to make statements related to property value. However, a broad brush statement would be as development pressure increases for urban density development, so does property value. So I would not see property value reductions because there's interest in people living up here. I would see that being a boon to property value for both existing residents and the improved lands.
Thank you.
Commissioner. Andrew, refresh my memory. Do you remember the off-ramp we proposed? I think it was on 56th. Is that going to be affected by this property? I can't remember how we did that. You get what I'm going at?
Commissioner McLean, this property should not affect, nor should the interchange affect this property.
Okay, because I remember we had it diverted, or you're a different way. Just want to make sure.
That would have been some items we had closer to 56th Avenue and the implement dealer down here.
Right.
But again, the future expressway would go up 56 and then go over. So a lot of things are tied up together in North Mandan.
Thank you, Andrew.
Any comments or questions on item number 3? Again, we're still open for public. Sir, do you have any comments or that you want to state on this? Okay, thank you. I'll give one last call for anybody dialing in. I'll close public comment and return it back to the commission.
Commissioner, I would, so as I understand, the north-south road would not really be affected, approving this would not really affect anything in terms of that north-south road, right? The concern would be is if you'd want to go through that property someday and have access. Is that?
Chair, Commissioner Gardner, at this point, there really are no major plans for the future north-south collector. We're just setting aside space for it at a time where it's warranted. It'll likely be brought in as development is occurring up there.
Oh, I guess one other question, Andrew. You said that there was someone that was gonna write. Did they indicate something negative or positive either way, and were they a neighbor?
Chair, Commissioner Gardner, their comments were primarily related to the siting of the buildings. However, they weren't submitted formally, so the level that I feel communicating them is kind of with a grain of salt. They were primarily related to a desire that they be situated on the north property line versus the south.
And then this parcel is buffered by this other house to the south with the shop. So it's not like this shop is going right next to the residential high density, medium density, whatever neighborhood, right?
Yeah, Chair, Commissioner Gardner, you're correct. There is probably a 3 or so acre lot with a rural residence zoned R7, just immediately to the south of this.
I guess I'm searching for the urgency I'm searching for the problem, but or where the big concern would be. So I guess I feel like my concerns are kind of met unless someone else has found something that's important.
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
I don't like the precedent it's setting. I guess it's just a huge variance, but on the other hand, if you look at the totality of the circumstances, the property to the south and the property to the north, you realize that it's basically commercial and rural. So it's an unusual situation and kind of puts us in a tough spot. But I'm okay either way, I guess.
I would just share that I would either be in support of approving a variance because of the zoning of R7 causing this situation, or would also be supportive of asking the applicant to resubmit for a zone change that just simply allows for this type of outbuilding as a right of that type of zoning too. So those are kind of the two directions that I'm supportive of.
Well, and I'm just kind of wondering what the difference between a shop is and cold storage. But I guess we're not going to have it heated. Yeah, right.
In my neighborhood, we call it a barn.
That's another question I had, actually. I think the applicant said in his comments it was a pole structure. What's the difference between a pole structure and the shop, and is that a pole barn?
One would have a foundation, the other would not.
Yeah.
Heat the shop, they would have a foundation in it.
What would the exterior of it be? Sheet metal.
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Smith. The plan for the 80 by 100 shop was a full submitted design plan, building, and then the pole structure, which would be allowed in this, in the ETA, not in our normal setting, is also allowed, but I would guess it's, a lot easier. The trick between the two was the size of it. So when you get to an 80 by 100 structure, you need to have engineering on it. And the pole structures don't necessarily need that with how they're designed. And as Ellen, or I should say Commissioner Huber, discussed the barn styles and things like that, which I think is probably what he's going to with the slightly smaller structure than the 80 by 100. But I have a full plan set for an 80 by 100 shop, and it's got, full foundation, full everything on it. So that, I think that's the difference. But as Mark said too, cold versus the other one will be heated. So. Nope, not attached. Correct. Yeah, detached.
Any further discussion?
I guess there was one other, we started talking about, it was brought up there's going to be a de facto change in zoning. Is that going to happen? Or is that what you guys were talking, was that, Ellen, was that what you were talking about with the?
Commissioner, what I meant was by doing the two variances, it's such a huge variance that it's basically you're changing the zoning without saying it. Is
Gotcha.
kind of what I was saying, so.
Like an implied.
Yeah.
Again, any further discussion? Are we ready for a motion?
I can just tell you, I could go either way on this. I don't know which finding of fact I would try to cite. That's where I'm at with this one, Mike.
I've tried a couple times on these and I've failed.
Yeah, I know you have, yeah. But that's where I'm like, we already gave them 8,000 square feet, but anyway. Somebody else wants to make the motion this time.
I can give it a whirl. I would move to recommend approval of the variance from section 105-1-3, subsection 4 of the City Code of Ordinances related to accessory buildings in the R7 residential zoning district to permit the variance request up to 11,000 square feet of accessory structure square footage configured in 2 buildings due to the following hardship. And that would be that the hardship is caused by the provisions of the zoning ordinance, and to modify the following staff findings of fact.
You're just taking the word not out of there then?
That is correct. Or was that my finding of fact, and then do I need the hardship was in a different place? I apologize.
You're doing it right.
Chair, Commissioner Huber, the hardship would be one of the ones that Mr. Gordon submitted.
It
The
would be
findings
what
are the
he's
ones
addressed
that I
on this
provided. Thank you.
page here.
Okay, so I would say, if I could just modify this motion in process, due to the hardship of the applicant being derived of a reasonable use of said land or building, and to modify the staff finding of fact, which would be, the fact is that the hardship is caused by the provisions of the zoning ordinance.
Nice job, too. I can second her. Great job there.
Well, motion by Commissioner Huber, second by Commissioner McLean. And I'll try to echo this motion. Motion is to recommend approval of the variance from section 105-1-3, subsection 4 of the City Code of Ordinances related to accessory buildings in the R7 residential zoning district to permit the variance request due to the following hardship. Hardship is due to the applicant is deprived use of said land based on the provisions in the zoning ordinance related to this particular property. Does that sound clean?
It does.
Thank you.
Yes, bud.
Any questions? With none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Langang,
Yes.
Commissioner Huber,
Yes.
Commissioner Mutter,
Yes.
Commissioner Horn,
Yes.
Mayor Freilich,
Yes.
Commissioner Infeld,
Yes.
Commissioner McLean,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Chair Robinson.
Yes. And motion is passed. We'll move on to other business here. Item number 1, potential request for future land use plan amendment. Andrew?
Chair Robinson, Commissioners, I'll preface this by saying normally we would not take up your time entertaining kind of requests like this. We've been asked essentially to put out a feeler, which is not something we normally do. However, there are some nuances to this situation that maybe warrant some discussion this evening. For a little bit of background, I've just placed my street view in Southeast Mandan's Lakewood neighborhood. I'm on 40th Avenue Southeast by the New Discovery Montessori School. I'll call out the setting a little bit more. We have residential in every direction that you see here on this property, whether that be in a multifamily setting or a lower density duplex or single family scenario. The property that we have here has 2 owners. There's a private owner as well as a city owner. I'll reference my map here to show you which property the city of Mandan owns, which we received in back taxes and have had ownership of for quite some time now. Currently, there are 2 different commercial designations on this property. We believe that the property along 40th Avenue Southeast has a commercial zoning on it with a condition, applied sometime in 2006 maybe, preventing commercial or residential use on it. And then we have a commercial lot in the back that allows residential use on it that the city owns. We have made this property available for purchase, and an offer was received with a non-supported land use essentially. Since 2015, the city's land use plan has called for high-density residential to be developed on this property. Recent investments made in this area by the city include kind of further support of that residential development. Of course, the school district bringing in an elementary school signifies even more resources, I guess, for residential development down here. We did receive an offer for less than asking with some condition, or I guess with some asterisks for it, for multi-use shop development on this property. Multi-use shops, as this board is well familiar with, are a special use permit. Special uses may not take place in properties where the city's land use plan does not support that special use. So essentially the project has stopped there. They are proposing to purchase it from the city to construct multi-use shops. We will not accept the application with a land use plan that doesn't support special use commercial on it. And therefore, their plan would require amending the city's land use plan to support multi-use shop development on it. I've outlined concerns to the city commission related to the complementariness, if that's the word, or how complementary this would be to adjacent uses. Of course, I called out every single property has been able to be developed as residential in this area. The applicants feel that that's not possible for this property. The nearest non-residential would be a 4-5 minute walk to the north, getting close to 3 or 4 city blocks away. We do feel that the proposed use would introduce some conflicts, of course, hours of operation, form. Obviously, the type of use that's taking place is a drastic departure from what people have chosen in this area. And I would recommend that the city not entertain an application for a land use plan amendment in this property, and instead work in other ways to help the applicant identify a residential use for this property. So, long story short, the group is the owner of the property in front of us being the city, and they are not able to have a special use permit with the land use plan presenting a conflict. I don't know if this board has any comments. They've just asked if I would put a feeler out. As staff, I would not support this. I feel like it would be a step in the wrong direction for this area. Do you have any questions for me?
Andrew, I know this lot very well. How are they going to get access to do these? What was their plan there?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner, they would not need access to the rear lot, as they would buy it and combine them into one.
So it's the first thing you bought. Okay. Yeah. We talked about this lot as a grass clipping site potentially. So, yeah.
This is the site plan on the screen right now showing the two combined.
Okay. That's combined in both of them.
Right, and then the city lot, half of it is basically a drainage area.
Right.
Is that part of the stormwater drainage system that's already been dedicated? And second, is that considered a wetland? Is there going to be a wetland issue with that?
Chair Robinson, Commissioners, with our research, we haven't identified any specific stormwater-related infrastructure on this property, and any sale of it would be essentially buyer beware. We didn't accept the terms of it coming to us, so we were not really able to make thorough claims on its use. However, any development on it would be subject to delineations and things like that to make sure that we're not resulting in the destruction of anything.
So Andrew, did you put any feelers out on the, I know the lot area way too well too, but I know there's an apartment complex and some twin homes and stuff down there. Is there, you guys any feelers of either way on that down there?
Chair Robinson, Commissioner Mutter, no, we haven't made any direct outreach to folks. We use the assistance of a broker with the city-owned property. We've received inquiries over the years for non-residential development on this parcel, and most folks have just walked away knowing that there would be challenges to doing that. So.
So for those that know the lot well, where we see the elevation lines, is that actually a drain channel in there?
Yes.
Yes.
And then does it link up with one of the bays?
No. Oh, the drainage itself?
Yeah. Stormwater, yes.
Chair, the history of this property, it's been a tilled field. It's looked wet, it's looked dry over the years. When you look at wetland inventories, it doesn't extend onto this property. However, there are some characteristics that are similar. So all along the lines, we've essentially made it clear that this would be a great place for your stormwater, your open space, things like that, but not really for placing fill and things like that. And just to reiterate, this applicant has accepted those terms and would be agreeable to performing the studies necessary in order to place fill or do something.
If you look just immediately south of Mackenzie, you can see where there's frozen water. That's part of the Lakewood Bay. And when we have high water, that's full, but that's also a dedicated stormwater, but it's also, the Corps considers that a dedication of wetlands right there, so. But that's what you're draining into.
Andrew, have they purchased the property, or is it contingent on trying to get zoning?
Chair, the party does own the property in the front, and they've submitted an offer for the property in the back.
Contingent on this, though, correct?
The city commission declined the offer, no contingencies.
Chair Robinson and Andrew, if I might, maybe a question and a comment, but was this property ever part of a master plan? Was there supposed to have been a pond in this area?
Chair, Commissioner Huber, when we've reviewed our records, we haven't found documentation such as drainage or wetlands or its involvement in a stormwater management plan. We also acknowledge that since this development was approved, there's like 2 people who still work at the city, so.
I wasn't sure there had one time had been master plans that would have, brought more man-made inlets in toward 40th, and I wasn't sure if this was intended to have been one of those at one time. But I guess otherwise, I mean, I think it makes sense for the property owner in the front, to be the ideal buyer for this property, but I'm not supportive of the use and would like to see it be something more harmonious with the existing residential, and it does seem like there would be an opportunity to do that there, and I think there are a number of housing programs under consideration in the North Dakota legislative session this round that might make that even more attractive to develop in a medium to higher density fashion as suggested.
I would agree with Commissioner Huber's comments on that.
Okay. Like I said, I was really just trying to put out a feeler, so Chair, Commissioners, I appreciate that. Do you have any other comments you'd like me to forward on to the prospective applicant? They do intend to submit an application for this Friday's meeting. I don't know if it will include the future land use plan amendment. If it is just the multi-use shop application, again, city ordinance does prevent the issuance of multi-use shops or really any special use permit when there is a conflict with an adopted plan. So I'm not sure if I'll actually be able to present it to the commission or not.
You feel, Andrew, you got enough feedback for
I do.
visiting with him? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to item number 2, another business, an update on the zoning study.
Thank you, Chair Robinson, Commissioners. I'll turn your direction to city website again on here. This web page has been updated. If I can have the screen, thank you. With a few more bits of information and results from scheduling. Don't have a major update for you tonight. However, we've made it through the bulk of the developer engagement. We've identified a few things that will need a little bit more adjusting. Some topics around, I believe, boulevard landscaping and new subdivisions, driveway widths and things like that will require a little bit of future analysis. So those are items that came out of the developer engagement that we feel need adjusting. Others we would like to sort of test the waters and see what they turn into. I guess if I can adjust to a timing update, I have announced, personally for myself, I have announced that I'm moving and that my last day with the city will be in May. So that does sort of booger up the adoption slightly, of course, as we were ramping up to get that done. If you reference the timing here on the left, rather than, I guess my recommendation to the city would be to really focus on making sure that the ordinance is prepared for eventual adoption, of course. It'll need to be by a different city planner, and they'll need time to get acquainted with the changes as well. So the timing of this spring is likely not going to happen. I personally would not feel very good basically not telling you guys what my life plans are. So essentially, as to avoid getting us through all the motions of adopting an ordinance and jumping on the plane, I figured I would let you know now before we really start that process. If you have any questions for me on how that relates to the timing, I can take them. However, realize that's kind of a bold statement I just made. It really has been a great experience being your city planner for a few years. Thinking of some of the highlights that I've had to work on. Of course, I have had great relationships with all of my colleagues and the stakeholders that are in this area. We really have a lot of folks who really do care about the future of our communities here. When I first started, one of the first items I had was the new high school, and right after that it was working with now Commissioner Huber on figuring out what to do with the old high school. This is something that this board will have to work on. It's not a project that's over by any means. There have been a ton of developments that have taken place. I feel like I've been able to contribute to a lot of different projects, and the time is right for me to step away and figure out what I want to focus on with the next step in my career. I don't have a job lined up. I won't be working, but I will be figuring out what my eventual calling is towards. And like I said, my last day with the city will be May 9th. The pleasure's been mine. I'll see you at the April Planning Commission. Thank you.
Well, we thank you, Andrew. I do know this zoning work the last, say, 12 months has been quite important to you, so appreciate the efforts there.
Sure, I can't make a motion to deny him the ability to move.
I second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Chair Robinson, would it be in order to make a motion to commend Planner Strami on a job extremely well done and thank him for his years of service and certainly leaving our community in a better place than he found it?
Quite appropriate.
Second.
Third.
Fifth.
Sounds unanimous. With nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And we are adjourned. Thank you.